Hello and welcome back. Today we are doing another video on the NFL draft as it comes up on Thursday. Fast approaching. But after the blockbuster trade we saw yesterday between Cincinnati and the Giants, trading pick 10 for a perennial All-Pro and Dexter, signing him to a new deal, a lot of change has happened within the NFL. This video is going to be my take on what I think will happen in the first round based on what we've seen and kind of the trend I'm looking at, okay? So I'm a Cowboys fan. I'm going to try and do this without the purpose of bias. Obviously, this is just going to be what I think the first round will look like. Not every pick, I think, will be based on what I believe. It'll be more based on what the team normally does and kind of the direction I think they'll go in. And there might be some picks that you don't agree with. I don't agree with. But let me know down below who you think will go in certain places. If you have a favorite team, what team you want to draft a certain pick. So to start us off with the 1-1, we all know what's going to happen. The Raiders go and sign Kirk Cousins as a player that could potentially play early. They don't necessarily. I know Kubiak went and said they don't want to play their quarterback if they draft one, which they will super early. But I think we have Mendoza going first. Now this is going to be without trades. I think there's going to be a lot of movement. And there could be a lot of movement depending on teams trying to trade out. I know the top four teams have all mentioned trading back. Teams like the Cowboys, the Saints have talked about, the Chiefs have talked about moving up, but we're going to do no trades here. I think this one, the Jets, I think just from a needs standpoint, they need stars. They need players that can be, all pro type potential. So we're going to go with Arvell Reese, although I know David Bailey's probably the normal pick. I actually think the Jets would be a good spot if they move back a little bit for Ruben Bain, although he's had quite a fall in the past couple of days. Arizona, you need impact players. I think this might be more surprising just because I've seen a lot of David Bailey, but I think when you look at a franchise and you're looking for a place to restart, you start up front. I'm taking Francis Mauigoa, which will cause a cascade effect, but I think if Arizona's serious about wanting to get the most out of the talent they have good receivers. Jacoby Brissett is a usable quarterback, but you need to bolster that line. I know you have Paris on one side, but on the other side of that, defensively you could use pieces, but I think you want to build that O-line, and getting a cornerstone tackle is always a great start. Next, for the Titans, if this is how this works out, I can see them going Jeremiah Love. I don't think they will. I think Jeremiah Love will have a slight fall, but I think here they go David Bailey, best player available. According to the metrics, I don't think he's necessarily going to be the best just because he hasn't shown a lot in terms of his bend. He hasn't shown a lot in terms of his run-stopping ability. I think he has a lot of pass rush upside, but can you really hone that in? Now for the Giants, I know they just had a visit with Jordan Tyson. Will there be a run on the premier type players? I think they take the best player available. I think they'll go one pick with the offense, one pick with the defense. I don't think they'll go Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs. If you're a Cowboys fan, you hope that they don't do that. But I think they take the best player currently, which is Sonny Styles, and I think they'll pair him with the receiver if possible. Now, if you're the Browns, Mauigoa's gone. Do you feel that strong about Freeling? You might want to trade back. Do you feel that strong about Fano? I'm not sure. I think the Browns, though, need to lock down a number one. Jerry Jeudy can be a 3. He can be a 2. He can't be a 1. I think they go the best receiver in this draft class, Carnell Tate, at 7. You cannot go into next year with the weapons you had this past year. If I'm the Commanders, right, Jaden Daniels had to deal with injuries. Mariota came in. Your best receiver can't be an aging Deebo Samuels, and your second best receiver can't be Luke McCaffrey. You need to make a move for a receiver. I think the best player that differentiates themselves, and obviously this is opposite of Terry McLaurin, but you want to have that 1-2 as the best teams in the NFC East do. I'm taking Jordan Tyson here, which might throw a little wrench in a lot of teams' plans because a lot of talent is going off early. With the receivers, it might cause a cascade effect and maybe teams reach. Now, for the Saints, I know their team potentially looking at Mansour Lane. I think they need pass rush, and I think they want to address pass rush. We're taking Ruben Bain, although I think Mekhi Lemon would have been a great pick there. Now, for the Chiefs, I saw a report saying that they might potentially consider going running back, even though they got Kenneth Walker, right? I don't see it. I think they go corner. I think they go best corner available. Mansour Lane, you need to fix that secondary after you just lost Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson. So what do you do to replace that talent? You go get new guys. Now, like I said with the Giants, they go Sonny Styles with the first pick. Now I think they need offense. But what do you feel, right? Jordan Tyson's gone, Colonel Tate's gone. Do you want Lemon and that sort of offense? I think with a hardball team, right, you potentially want to run the ball more. Are you banking everything on Cam Scatterbo coming back from injury? I'm not sure if you want to do that. Do you think Tyron Tracy is a good running back too? I'm not sure. What I do know, though, is the interior presence and the line needs help. They need help at tackle. They need help at guard. They haven't been great in terms of finding that talent, but I think somebody that could project really well at guard and the interior and can kind of help with the D tackles they're going to have to face with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and Quinnen Williams and Kenny Clark. You need interior, and I think this guy will be an absolute beast. We're going to go with Ione just because you saw the Cowboys do last year with Tyler Booker early, and you saw the benefit of having guards that can play and move people, and that's what the Giants need to do. They need to move people. They need aggressiveness. They need to protect their quarterback. Now, pick 11. I think there's two directions you could go if you are the Dolphins, but they're not trading Devon Achane, right? So if he's not gone, that means you need to get a cornerstone guy that can be a difference maker. I think they go with Mekhi Lemon, who was the best receiver in terms of run after catch, can play big for his size, can replace Jalen Waddle on a sort of catch and go concept, can stretch the field. I think you want to give Malik Willis an opportunity to prove that maybe he can be a franchise guy. And how do you do that? You give him weapons. Now, here at pick 12, I think absolute no-brainer if he's still here. The Cowboys go Caleb Downs. Jeremiah Love falling is unusual. I think some teams that could have taken Jeremiah Love and maybe would. Definitely the Giants, the Titans, the Commanders. A lot of teams that could potentially use the services, even the Saints, but I feel like a lot of teams have gaping holes in running back. Like, I'm not sure if that's one for many of these teams. Now, I think the Rams stockpiled on corner, but what are you looking at for the future at tackle, especially if Haverstein is not going to be around? I think they upgrade and get Monroe Freeling as a tackle that can kind of replace that production. For the Ravens, now this is a difficult team to do a pick for because you have the fact that they lost their tight end 2 and 3 with likely leaving, and now it's Mark Andrews, Lamar, and you have Derrick Henry, right? But they've always run a lot of two-back and a lot of secondary runner. And I think if you want to do that, Jeremiah Love has fallen this far. And I don't know if people would be appreciative of it because you have Derrick Henry, but Derrick Henry had an off year, wasn't his best, is in a decline. I think if you want to go run stopper, Caden McDonald is a great pick, maybe reach. Peter Woods is here. Kenyon Sadiq could be a great weapon for Lamar. But I'm going to go with Jeremiah Love because he's fallen this far. And I think from the value perspective, what the Ravens want to do, they take the best player, and they have taken the best player. And I think you give yourself a good 1-2 punch with Henry and Love. That might be one of the best running back duos of all time if Derrick Henry has an even decent season. Now, for the Buccaneers, they need pass rush. I think this is a spot where you could see somebody like, Pierre Peter Woods could potentially go. Keldrick Falk if you believe in the talent. But I'm going to go with the proven talent. They don't necessarily care about the age. In Tampa Bay with Akeem Mesidor, they go the production route and they get a guy who can be a guy. Now for the Jets, they get Arvell Reese at pick 2. At pick 16, I think they're going to go with the guy who was the best cornerback in this draft by far and could be a top 5 player if he didn't have the injuries. He ran well, and he looks like he doesn't have any hitches. He did some workouts. I think the Jets go Jermod McCoy, who had phenomenal tape. Now for the Lions, you wanted a tackle opposite of Penei Sewell. Decker is leaving. You also need help in the secondary, but your biggest need to me is tackle. It screams tackle and guard. You need interior as well. So I think they're going to go with the best inside/outside lineman available with Spencer Fano. With the Vikings at 18, this is the most obvious pick in the draft. If the Cowboys or a team don't move ahead of them, Dylan Thieneman can replace the production of Harrison Smith, can play over the top, and, white safety in Minnesota, we've seen that player before, and I think Dylan Thieneman can be a real difference maker for a Vikings defense that just needs a replacement. They're already there in terms of getting to the passer. They can stop the run. I think Brian Flores has a great defense, and it really shows. Now, next up at 19, the Panthers are an interesting team because they made moves with Jalen Phillips. They upgraded their defense. They got a linebacker as well. I think they're a team that can go either way, but if I watch a game, right, if you believe that Bryce Young is a guy, you want to give him more weapons, and I know you go Ted O'Rourke McMillan, but I think they make a splash player, and they go get a guy who can be another playmaker and can help open up the game for Bryce Young. You could go O-line. They made investments in the O-line, but I'm going to go with a receiver who I think kind of opens the field for the Panthers, and then we're going to go Casey Concepcion. Absolute difference maker when you get the ball in his hand. They had Jimmy Horn and kind of had him in a similar role, but Jimmy Horn is limited in his route tree. I think Casey could be awesome in a system that can run the ball and play out of the play action. Now for the Cowboys at 20. You go with Caleb Downs, best safety in the draft. At 20, there's a lot of players that I think they might reach on and they might take. Keldrick Falk being one of them. I know they like the potential. Peter Woods, he had a lot of high praise from Quinnen Williams, and that's a good place to go. Omar Cooper Jr., is George Pickens around long term? He probably has 2 years with the team left. I think they're going to keep him around for Dax window. Caden Proctor, you need a right tackle. You need to replace Terrence Steele, who's been very bad. Caden McDonald. You have Quinnen Williams and Kenny Clark, but you need a rotation. And they got some pass rush. If they can move Quinnen outside, you need a big stuffer. But I think they go with the player who is the most turnover-causing player in the draft. You look at CJ Allen, right? And his big take is he can call a defense. He did it on his own at Georgia, which is great. But for the Cowboys' needs, they need playmakers. They didn't have any turnovers last year. You need somebody opposite of Overshown. And in a nickel format, which I think the Cowboys will be in, you don't necessarily need a green dot from that position. You go get Caleb Downs, who's one of the smartest players in the college draft. He led an Alabama defense as a freshman, and then he led 2 Ohio State defenses. So I'm taking Jacob Rodriguez, who the Cowboys have been high on and they've done a lot of research on, and I think he offers what you need, which is an absolute playmaker. At pick 21, the Steelers have invested in their D-line with Harmon last year, so I don't think they go tackle. You have your edges with TJ Watt, Highsmith, and so I think that allows you to go on the opposite end and take a weapon. You have Darnell Washington, so you don't need Kenyon Sadiq. So we're going to go Caleb Lomu, who can slide in, play guard, and can bolster that interior for the Steelers. Next for the Chargers. The Chargers have Gadsden, so they don't really need Sadiq either. They need edge. They need playmakers, but I think they're willing to take a leap at a younger player. So I think they take Keldrick Falk here. And then we have the Eagles. Now, Dallas Goedert is on his way out. The Eagles are always a team willing to take the best player. They went and traded and got another receiver. And And I don't think they necessarily need that, but I think what they could use is a big tight end who can stretch the field, can make Jalen Hurts' life easier, and we know he needs it easier. So I think they go with Kendon here, ending that slot. I can see them going Caden Proctor because you start to look at a life without Lane Johnson. He's had more injuries, and also the lot of the Eagles line is banged up. So you look at, like, what do we potentially do there? Next up for the Browns at 24. Carnell Tate went at 6. And so I think you look and you're like, all right, we got a receiver of the future. We just need playmakers, right? On D-line, you have Mason Graham, you have Myles Garrett. That's not necessarily what you're trying to do. I think you need to upgrade that line. And like we talked about, and as I've said, best tackle potentially, based on physical traits, Caden Proctor. Can you turn him into something and kind of help fix what you're lacking? Now at 25 for the Bears, they need linebacker, they need interior for the D-line. Do they want a run stopper or do they want an absolute playmaking freak? I think Peter Woods, his 2025 tape was bad because every person on that defense looked bad. But I think in reality, he's going to look really good in an NFL defense and bounce back to his 2024 self, who again was one of the best players in college football. So we're going to go with Peter Woods to the Bears. Next at 26. I don't know what direction you go for the Bills. You go out and get a receiver in Keon Coleman, who doesn't really pan out. You go get DJ Moore on an expensive deal. What do you need now? Well, you need a lot of things. One of those being edge, as you're losing some of your pieces there. So I think this is where we see the first kind of reach from like the perspective of the draft board, and we're going to take Zion Young, an absolute freak. I think he could go and be a real difference maker in Buffalo, and they need high pass rush upside. For the 49ers, you haven't signed Juwan Jennings yet. Brandon Ayuk is gone. What has Ricky Pearsall been doing? I think they want an absolute playmaker at receiver. Also thinking about Trent Williams not being around. So it's like, do you want your receiver of the future with Omar Cooper Jr. or do you want to tackle? I think this is a team where you need a tackle. So let's keep Max in the area, go from Arizona State to San Francisco, and we get a tackle for the future. We don't want to risk a life where we don't have our left tackle in Trent Williams, and then we're just left hopeless. For the Texans, they need interior. Their O-line is terrible. So I think they go with Blake Miller. I don't know what you do with CJ Stroud, right? You really don't have a clear path. I think him and Bryce Young have made it to where they're good enough, but are they going to be great? And that's the issue. I think he has high upside, but this playoff run was probably one of the worst, and I think the team looked better whenever he wasn't at the helm. So if you're going to keep him around, you have to protect him, and I think that's what they do here. For the Chiefs at 29, earlier in the draft, the Chiefs took Master Lane. They upgraded the corner. Now, when Patrick Mahomes comes back, who's he throwing to? He needs a receiver. He does. And you have Rashee Rice, who can stretch the field. You have Worthy, who's hit or miss. You have Juju Smith, but I think they maybe shock a couple people and they go up and get a guy who maybe doesn't separate as well, but has really great physical traits and kind of gives off Mike Evans-esque vibe whenever the ball, in terms of his catch radius. We're going to go Denzel Boston. I think Omar Cooper Jr. sliding is quite insane, but this is just how the draft panned out. With that being said, because of the slide, right, I think the Dolphins could double dip a receiver, which sounds crazy, kind of is crazy. There's Colton Hood, Brandon Cisse, who I'm high on. Part of me wants to go Omar Cooper just because I don't think he'll slide this far, but we're going to go with Avion Terrell just because of how fluid he is, how he can play in multiple systems. He is one of the only players that looked good in that bad Clemson defense, and I think Avion Terrell, unlike his brother, will be a much higher impact player at the next level. For the Patriots, you could go a lot of things. Who is Drake May throwing to? He has a bunch of wide receiver twos and Booty and Bourne and all the various. Oh, well, Bourne's not there anymore. But Diggs is gone. You want to get the best receiver possible. Omar Cooper Jr. falling is awesome for you. Now, for the Seahawks, I think You don't have a running back. There's not a running back that I draft this high. But what do you need? You don't really need anything, but DeMarcus Lawrence is getting older. Maybe you want some versatility there. You have your nickel sort of pieces. You're in a really great spot. I think just in terms of value, the best player for them, TJ Parker's here, and I think TJ Parker could be a great edge. But I think somebody who on here isn't shown very highly, but he will be an actual playmaker. Cassius Howell, I really like him in that sort of system. But this is the final result. Let me know down below if your team did this. Would you be happy? Is this realistic to you? What picks would you have done if you were me? And then tell me who you're looking forward to seeing. I'm the Cowboys fan, so I think if this works out for the Cowboys, where they get Caleb Downs or Sonny Styles or Mansour Lane or Ruben Bain, a high-impact defensive player, and then at pick 20, you go get a guy that can make plays like Jacob Rodriguez. I don't think it's too early to draft the player that can change your franchise, and that's an important thing. Anyway, that's all for me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and have a good one. Peace.